A feature that I use in Excel in almost every single Excel file I create is named ranges. Named ranges allow us to take a formula like this using traditional Excel cell references and turn it into something like this that uses more natural language type structure. For me, this makes formulas much easier to read, understand, and debug if I'm not familiar with the formula. Now, a behavior of named ranges that keeps people from using the feature more than they probably should is that most people think named ranges are absolute in nature. Now, to show you what I mean, if I wanted to add up these values for 2019 and I used a traditional sum function, when I highlight those cells, I get the traditional cell reference, which is relative in nature, so that when I hit enter, I get the sum of 2019. But now when I go to the fill series handle and I repeat that formula to the adjacent cells, I can get the same formula but look at different ranges of data because these references are relative references. Now, if I were to highlight the 2019 values and go up into the name box and give them a name like sales, now I could write a formula that says equals sum and then sales, which works in this case. But when I repeat that formula to the adjacent cells, it fails because sales is an absolute reference. Each one of these instances of the sum function is returning back to the same 2019 numbers for their calculation. So how can we rewrite this formula so it behaves more like a relative reference instead of an absolute reference? In other words, each iteration of the sum function would look at its respective year's data. Instead of naming the cells that hold the data, what we'll do is we'll go to the cell that's going to hold the formula. Here is where we create the name. Now, this may seem completely opposite from what you'd think you'd have to do, but it's actually going to be correct. So from the cell we're going to write the formula, we're going to go up to the Formulas ribbon. In the Define Name section, we'll go to Name Manager, and we'll create a new name. The name I'm going to use is going to be called Year Data. Now, what is it going to refer to? This is where I'm going to jump out and point to the 12 cells above my current position. I'll return back. Now, as you can see, these cell references are absolute because they have those dollar signs. So we're going to hit the F4 key 3 times, 1, 2, 3, to remove those dollar signs. Now, of course, you could manually edit them out, but I think the F4 key is easier. Now the refers to field, its reference is relative. Hitting OK, hit close. Now my sum function will look like this, equals sum, open parentheses, and then I'll point to year data. This gives us the same answer we had before, but the magic is now when I repeat that formula, I don't get the same answer every single time. Even though you can see here, they're all using the exact same formula with the exact same reference. They're each looking at a different year's worth of data. So this one's looking here, 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 and here. Because all you're really saying is sum up the 12 cells above my current position. Now for the average sale per month over a 5-year period, I want to write the same average formula, but have each instance grab the 5 cells to the left of the current position. So we'll go up to Name Manager. We'll start a new name, and we'll call this month data. That refers to, I'm going to highlight the 5 cells to the left, but remember, I don't want absolute references, so I'm going to highlight the reference and hit F4 3 times and turn that into a relative reference. Hit OK, close. Now I can write a formula like equals average, and then I want to average the month data. There's my first instance of using month data for the average. We'll fill this down. And now we get to use the exact same formula with nice natural language representation, but each one of these is just looking at the 5 cells to the left. For the grand total, if I just really want to use named ranges everywhere, I can create a named range, go to New, and we'll call this one Total Sales. The reference for this will be the original yearly totals. Now, since I'm not filling this one down, I don't need to convert it, but you could if you want to. I'm going to just hit OK, close. And then I can say equals sum total sales. Now, every single formula in the spreadsheet is using more natural language representation with named ranges. Let's look at another way that we can use relative named ranges. This example is going to use an amortization table. Now, the point of this video is not to teach you how to build an amortization table. I've actually built most of it already. The only part we really want to focus on is the part that's going to use the relative named ranges. So here I have 4 variables, one called loan, one called rate, one called years, and one called payments per year or pay year. I'm using those 4 variables in a series of calculations. One where I calculate the interest per payment, which I've named interest per payment, and one where I'm calculating the total number of payments that I've called total payments. I also have a calculation that calculates the monthly payment, which I've named payment. Now for the part that's going to use these results to build the actual amortization table. We have to begin with the starting balance. In this case, I'm going to say equals, and I can just click on the cell that holds the loan amount, and I've named that loan. The formula to calculate the current payment's interest is going to be equals, then we'll take the previous month's balance, D14, and multiply that by the interest per payment. Now, interest per payment, we gave a name, which is acting as an absolute address because we always want to return to this location. But the D14 reference has to be relative because we have to look at a different previous month balance each payment. Now, this does work, but I don't want to see the old traditional cell reference in my formula of D14. I'd like to give that cell a name. So I'm going to delete that formula. Sitting in the position where the formula will be written, we're going to go up to Formulas, Name Manager. We're going to create a new name. The name I'm going to give this cell is Interest Previous Balance. And it's going to refer to the cell that is one row above and two columns to the right. This is an absolute address. It will return here every single time. I'm going to hit the F3 key 3 times to remove those dollar signs. Now this is a relative reference. So relative to wherever I create this formula, it's going to go up one row and two columns to the right to get that payment's previous balance. I'll hit OK, close. Now when I write the formula, I can say equals interest previous balance times, and I can just click on the interest per payment. Now something I didn't mention earlier, and this is a bit of a catch, something you have to be aware of. When you're writing the formula and you say equals, you can't just click on the previous month's balance. Even though it's been named, it's still going to use the old cell reference. Because names that are relative in nature, their positions will change as the position of the formula changes. So there is no fixed position with that name. It's all relative to wherever you are. So when you write the formula like equals, you have to type it in. And you can either type the whole thing in, or like I'm going to do, hit tab and just use the IntelliSense. So relative named ranges cannot be directly clicked. They have to be typed. Now, another way you could do this if you're not the best typist is you could say equals and then hit the F3 key, because F3 will bring up a list of named ranges, and then I can just pick it from a list. So I'm going to multiply that by the interest per payment. Now the principal is going to take this payment, which I have named payment, and subtract the current payment's interest, which is B15. So if I say equals payment minus, and then click on the current month interest, I get the old school cell reference, which I don't want. So I'm going to hit escape. Sitting in the position where we're going to write the principal formula, we'll go to Name Manager, create a new name, and I'm going to call this current interest. It's going to refer to the cell that is one column to the left of my current position. Hit F4 3 times to remove the dollar signs. Close. And now I can say equals, click on the green box payment, minus, and I'll use that F3 trick so I can choose current interest. Finally, the remaining balance after this payment. This is nothing more than saying equals the previous month's balance minus current month principal. But I don't want to see D14 minus C15, I want to see words. So in this position, I'll go to Name Manager, create a new name. I'm going to call this previous balance, and previous balance is going to look one cell above my current position. F4 3 times, remove the dollar signs. And while I'm here, I'll create another new named range called current principal, and this will look one cell to the left. F4 3 times, hit OK, close, and now my formula can say equals, F3 will choose the previous balance, and subtract from that, F3 current principal. Now when I take these three formulas and fill them down the remainder of the amortization table, everything still works. If we go to the bottom, zero balance at the end of the payment schedule. Every formula in this example is completely devoid of traditional cell references. Even though some formulas are using absolute references, others are using relative references, but they're all natural language. So let me know in the comments what you think about this. Have you used relative name ranges before? Did you even know you could do it, that it was even a thing that was possible? And do you have any examples of where you've used them in creative ways? Don't forget you can download this file by the link in the video description. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate you taking the time to watch our videos. And if you have a suggestion for an upcoming video, let us know in the comments. And remember, at BCTI, the learning never stops.